What if you've already died? Hundreds, maybe thousands of times. You were hit by a car, you drowned, you fell off a rooftop, but you didn't notice. Because in the instant your body failed, your consciousness jumped to the next nearest universe, where the crash didn't kill you, where you swam just a little harder, where the rooftop had a railing. You kept living seamlessly, and every time you should have died, you quantum leaped into the version of reality where you didn't. Welcome to a world where death isn't the end, it's just the next door opening. In this alternate reality, science has uncovered something extraordinary. Death doesn't erase consciousness. Instead, it reroutes it, transferring you into a nearly identical version of the universe where the fatal moment never happened. It's a theory rooted in quantum mechanics, particularly the many worlds interpretation. Every decision, every possible outcome, splits off into its own timeline. And in this world, when you die in one branch, your awareness leaps into another, one where you live. There are no pearly gates, no afterlife, no fading into black, just waking up, over and over, always in the version of reality where you survive. But this kind of immortality comes at a price, because if death doesn't exist, at least not for you, then neither does closure, neither does consequence, and neither does the version of reality where you stayed dead and let others move on. In this deathless multiverse, humanity begins to change. Our ideas of risk, identity, grief, even time itself begin to dissolve into something new. So what exactly is happening behind the scenes when you die? Let's start with the science and the strange physics that says you might be kill-proofed. The foundation of this reality-altering concept lies in one of quantum physics' most mind-bending ideas, MWI, or the many worlds interpretation. This theory suggests that every time an event could have multiple outcomes, the universe splits, one for each possibility. You chose coffee instead of tea. There's a universe where you didn't. You tripped and fell down the stairs. There's another universe where you caught yourself in time. Now take that concept and apply it to death. Let's say you're in a fatal car crash. Your body in this universe is mangled. Your heart stops, and medically you're gone. But from the perspective of your consciousness, the you inside your mind, something else happens. You lurch forward, blink, and find yourself miraculously unscathed. Same road, same weather, same car, except this time, the truck swerved in time. Or you hit the brakes just 1 second earlier. To an outside observer in Universe A, you died. But from your internal perspective, you jumped to Universe B where you lived. And to you, the experience feels continuous, seamless. You didn't die, you just survived. This is the core of quantum immortality, the idea that a conscious observer never experiences their own death, because there will always be some timeline where they continue to exist. It sounds like science fiction, but the physics checks out, at least in theory. According to quantum mechanics, particles exist in multiple states until observed. Schrödinger's cat isn't just alive or dead, it's both, until the box is opened. Quantum immortality takes this idea and puts you in the box, and in this world, the box never opens to death. Because the only person who never sees your death is you. Naturally, this kind of reality has consequences. If no one ever truly dies from their own perspective, does that mean we're all immortal? Not quite. You're not leaping to any timeline, you're leaping to the closest survivable one. A version of Earth where everything is almost the same, just with one small difference. You're alive. That might mean the sky is a slightly different shade, that your favorite song was never written, or that someone you love no longer exists. This is the reason why there is Mandela effect. The shifts are subtle, barely noticeable at first, but over hundreds, thousands of jumps, the changes add up. And while your body might survive, your reality begins to unravel. But if death no longer holds us hostage, how does that change the way we live, our choices, our fears, and our sense of consequence? The answer, radically. Imagine a world where no one fears death, not because they've conquered it, but because they can't experience it. In this reality, every fatal moment is just another detour, a quantum side street. You don't perish, you pivot. The psychological impact of this truth reshapes humanity from the ground up. The moment the theory is accepted as fact, everything changes, because when death loses its sting, so does caution. People stop looking both ways. Extreme sports become mainstream. Daredevils are no longer thrill seekers. They're average people on a Tuesday afternoon. Why wear a helmet when you can just respawn. Society divides into two emerging mentalities: the immortals, those who embrace the leap, living recklessly and intensely, chasing high-risk experiences without hesitation; and the anchored, those who reject the quantum thrill, terrified not of dying, but of waking up in a version of life that's just a little too different. Soon, risk-taking becomes normalized, not just in adrenaline-fueled adventures, but in everyday life, gambling away fortunes, confessing dangerous secrets, walking into war zones, because to many, it's not reckless actions, it's just exploration. And this creates a paradox. With every death, you abandon a timeline. Loved ones grieve you, friends mourn you, a version of Earth does lose you, but to you, none of that matters. You survive, you keep going, which means death becomes personal, but never shared. This shatters empathy. Why care about someone else's death if you believe they're fine somewhere else? Funerals shift from mourning to celebration, not of life, but of survival elsewhere. See you in the next timeline becomes a cultural farewell. Unaliving also changes. If the victim just leaps into another version of reality, has anything truly been lost? Some even begin to justify violence under this logic. Assassins rationalize their work. They're not unalive. They're just not here anymore. The job is done. Ethics collapse or mutate, and then there's exits. For some, the idea of quantum leaping becomes a temptation. If life gets too painful, why not leap to a better one? One where your mistakes didn't happen, where your heartbreak never occurred, where you're finally happy. This leads to the rise of quantum seekers, people who intentionally trigger near-death moments hoping to jump to a better reality. Train tracks, gun triggers, cliff edges, not out of despair, but curiosity. But this game is dangerous, because while quantum leaping ensures survival, it doesn't guarantee improvement. You might leap to a reality where you survived that breakup, but also lost your job, or where your mum never died, but she never raised you either. Each jump is a roll of the cosmic dice, and for every person who embraces the deathless thrill, another begins to wonder if this life is even real anymore. When every version of you is slightly different, and your past slowly stops making sense, who are you, really? At first, the changes are small. You swear your favorite mug used to have a green stripe, not blue. A coworker's name sounds just a little off. Your childhood home feels colder than you remember, like the walls themselves forgot who you were. These aren't déjà vu moments. They're signs that you've leapt again. In this world where death is a quantum redirect, the self doesn't die, but over time, it begins to splinter. Each time you leap, your mind, your you, slides into a timeline with only slight variations. But those variations pile up, until eventually, you're living a life you technically never lived. You're a guest in your own existence, and the deeper the jumps go, the harder it becomes to reconcile what's real. People begin to keep continuity logs, daily journals to spot discrepancies. Did I have a sister yesterday? Was my scar always on this side? Why can't I remember the name of my first dog anymore? Psychologists can't keep up. Multiversal therapy becomes the fastest growing profession on Earth, not for treating depression or anxiety, but for treating existential erosion. Patients report waking up next to partners they no longer recognize, jobs that feel unfamiliar, books they know they've read, but that end completely differently. And yet, outwardly, they're the same person. That's when MDD, or multiversal dissociation disorder, enters the lexicon. A diagnosis for those who've jumped too many times, who no longer trust their own memories, instincts, or history. Because here's the horrifying truth. In this world, you are immortal, but your identity isn't, and that throws everything into question. If you remember loving someone who never loved you in this reality, does that love still matter? If you mourn a sibling who isn't dead here, are you grieving a ghost, or a version of yourself that only existed in a now abandoned universe? The lines blur. People begin to crave originality, the prime version of themselves, the one who was born in their birth universe and lived there until the end. But it's too late. Once you've jumped, you can never go back. So some try to create artificial anchors. They tattoo quantum coordinates on their skin. They implant memories with deliberate, verifiable markers. They leave themselves messages. If this is gone, you've leapt. And still, it's not enough. Because your mind adapts. It rewrites. It normalizes the new universe so smoothly, you forget the shift ever happened, until something breaks. Until one day you wake up, look in the mirror, and don't recognize the eyes staring back. As identity begins to dissolve, so too does the very foundation of belief. And in a world without finality, religion, culture, and the afterlife are forced to reinvent themselves. For thousands of years, human civilizations have clung to stories of what happens after heaven, hell, reincarnation, nirvana. We prayed, feared, sacrificed, and hoped, because death was the great unknown. But now death has become a detour, not a destination. And that reshapes everything we once believed. Religious institutions are thrown into crisis. The major doctrines, built on life ending and something else beginning, are suddenly outdated, because in this reality, nothing ends. The soul doesn't ascend. It doesn't reincarnate. It simply slides sideways. Some faiths collapse under the pressure. Others adapt radically. New religions emerge based on multiversal continuity. One teaches that God is not a being, but the algorithm that governs which universe you jump to. Another believes the soul is your accumulated stream of realities. The longer your chain, the closer you get to enlightenment. Churches evolve into quantum sanctuaries, where people gather not to worship a deity, but to synchronize their jumps. They chant in unison, meditate on continuity, and share journals of the realities they've left behind. Death is no longer mourned, but catalogued. Funerals become send-off ceremonies, not to grieve the deceased, but to celebrate the version of them that moved on. Mourners leave messages in multiversal journals, hoping their loved ones read them in the next timeline. Cemeteries are replaced by multiversal beacons, monuments not to the dead, but to the path of their leaps. They aren't tombstones, they're launch pads. And yet, something darker begins to creep in. Some people become obsessed with escaping this world. They don't want to jump into a slightly altered life. They want paradise. They want heaven, utopia, perfection. And that belief gives rise to a radical movement. The Purifiers, groups that claim the only way to reach the final universe is to go in a specific, sacred way. Their rituals are extreme, their ideologies are violent, and their promises salvation in the form of a quantum leap to the ideal self, a version of you in a universe without pain, grief, or failure. Meanwhile, others turn away from religion entirely. They embrace post-spiritualism, a philosophy that says there is no soul, only persistent consciousness. No karma, no judgment, just timelines, endlessly stitched together by probability. Art shifts as well. Painters stop portraying death as skulls or graves. Instead, they paint doors, mirrors, forks in the road. The afterlife becomes abstract, less a place, more a direction. Storytelling transforms too. Myths now focus on characters who remember previous lives. Movies explore heroes lost between timelines. Songs speak of lovers found in other versions of reality. Because now, everyone knows, the next version of you is out there, already living, already waiting. And for some, that knowledge is intoxicating. But as beliefs evolve, so too does power. And soon, governments and institutions find new ways to use death itself as a tool of control. When death becomes a gateway instead of a grave, it doesn't just shift culture, it shifts power. Governments, militaries, corporations, they all begin to adapt. And soon, they realize something chilling. If death doesn't end consciousness, its destructive potential could manifest in truly unexpected forms. Imagine a courtroom in this world. A man is convicted of murder. The judge issues a sentence, not life in prison, not death penalty, but forced quantum exile. The convict is executed, but not to die, to vanish, his consciousness forced into another version of reality, where the justice system doesn't exist, or the crime never happened. Out of sight, out of this universe. This becomes a tool for governments to erase problems, political dissidents, whistleblowers, even the chronically ill. If they can just leap away, why bother with expensive prisons or healthcare systems? Meanwhile, wars evolve. No longer are battles fought to destroy the enemy's body. The goal becomes displacement, to cause fatal conditions that eject soldiers from this timeline entirely. Militaries develop weapons designed not to kill en masse, but to selectively shift enemy consciousness into fragmented, chaotic universes. The result: soldiers vanish mid-battle, never to return. It's not war, it's mass excommunication from reality. Diplomats coin a new term, dimensional deportation. Nations sign treaties banning quantum warfare, but enforcement is impossible because every soldier killed could now be continuing their mission somewhere else. This also spawns a new form of terrorism. Radical groups begin conducting attacks designed to trigger mass quantum leaps. Hospitals, airports, schools. They don't want death. They want dispersion, to scatter the population across the multiverse. Some cults take this further. They believe Earth itself must be purged, that only by leaping can humanity evolve. They set off devices, called disruptors, high-risk, high-fatality events, meant to cause millions of jumps simultaneously. They call it the Ascension. Everyone else calls it an existential catastrophe. To control the chaos, new institutions emerged. The Multiversal Census Bureau tries to track individuals across realities. The Continuity Enforcement Agency forms to detect and punish crimes committed before a jump. A black market rises for identity reprogramming. Tools that allow people to scrub their memories and assume new lives in the next universe need to disappear. Just die and wake up as someone else. Even insurance companies get in on the act. You can now buy existence continuity plans. Policies that guarantee your assets transfer to your post-jump self, assuming your new universe has compatible laws. And then there's politics. Leaders begin faking their own deaths, leaping into more favorable timelines, and returning under new identities. Presidents, dictators, CEOs, all exploiting the loop. Some governments go further. They develop quantum walls, containment fields that prevent consciousness from leaping out of their timeline. They don't imprison bodies, they imprison souls. In the quest to control death, humanity doesn't just change the rules. It rewrites the entire game. But every game has its limits, and eventually, those limits come crashing down. When the multiverse runs out of places to hide, Quantum Immortality promises continuity. You die, you leap, over and over. But here's the part no one talks about. It doesn't go on forever. Every jump requires a nearby universe, one where you survived. But what happens when you've exhausted the possibilities? When every variation of you lived is used up? Welcome to the fracture effect. At first, the leaps are seamless. You are you. Same body, same memories, same life, mostly. But over time, the cracks start showing. One universe, your partner's name is wrong. Next one, your house is missing a floor. Then you're not left-handed anymore. Then your cat never existed. Then you never had a childhood. The universes you leap into stop being close. They start being quote-unquote available. Your consciousness clings to the nearest match, but the options get stranger, thinner, further away from home, and eventually there are no matches left. This is the drift. People begin to lose their grip on any one identity. They start waking up in lives they can't understand, speaking languages they don't know, living in bodies with different scars, different habits, different histories, and some wake up gay. Some wake up on a version of Earth that never discovered fire. Others wake up post-apocalypse, or underwater, or in timelines where Earth doesn't exist at all. At this point, reality becomes survival. You're not living, you're leaping to avoid ending. Each universe you enter is less human, less stable, less compatible with who you were, and your consciousness suffers. The brain, after all, is tied to biology. Your thoughts adapt to your new body's structure, chemistry, wiring, which means that with each leap, the you that arrives becomes a little more foreign. Some people fragment entirely. They begin to remember all their timelines at once. Thousands of deaths, thousands of lives. Memories bleed together. Language collapses. Time stops making sense. They become fractured souls, beings who exist between realities, unable to land anywhere stable. Scientists try to stop it. They develop consciousness stabilizers, neural implants, that restrict jumping to only the closest compatible realities. They fail. Spiritual leaders offer rituals to anchor your soul. They also fail. Governments pass laws forbidding more than a certain number of jumps per decade. Pointless. You don't choose to leap. You just do. And then, for some, it ends. Not with death, but with disconnection. One day, there's simply no version left. No reality where you survived. No body to wake up in. No story to continue. This isn't death in the traditional sense. It's a final silence, a severing from all timelines, You don't cease to exist. You just stop finding new places to be. The infinite loop finally breaks. And for a civilization built on the myth of unending continuity, this revelation is devastating, because now humanity must face its greatest question yet. If you've leapt 1,000 times, lived 1,000 lives, but lost the memory of who you were, are you still you at all? So here you are. You've died, again and again, crushed by cars, consumed by fire, swallowed by oceans, and each time you woke up somewhere else. Still you. At least, that's what you told yourself. But let's be honest, after the 1,000th jump, are you really you anymore? Or just a consciousness holding a memory of something that used to be? In this world where death is just a detour, identity isn't fixed. It's fluid, shifting, built on fragments of past timelines, stitched together by familiarity and hope. You remember a brother who doesn't exist here. You crave foods your body never tasted. You cry over losses that never happened in this version of your life. And the person in the mirror, they've got your eyes, but they don't quite blink the same. So, are you still you? Or are you a multiversal ghost, drifting through endless lives, slowly forgetting the original? Maybe you were brave once. Maybe you were selfish. Maybe you were kind, cruel, brilliant, broken. In some timeline, you were all those things. But now, you're something else. A survivor of realities. And maybe that's what humanity becomes in this world. Not citizens of countries or followers of faiths, but quantum wanderers. Living lives we didn't start, chasing futures we can't finish, hoping, in the end, to land somewhere that finally feels like home. Not because death stopped us, but because we stopped running. And if you, the version watching this video, are still here, maybe this is your home, maybe this is your timeline, and maybe, just maybe, you're the last one left. If this version of you made it to the end, chances are there's a version of you doing the same somewhere else. So before you leap again, lock this moment in. Leave a comment with the weirdest deja vu you've ever had, or more even stranger instances, a Mandela effect only within yourself. Was it a glitch or just a memory from another you? Like this video to let us and your other selves know you were here, that you existed in this version. And if you haven't already, subscribe, not just for more content like this, but so the next time you jump, at least one thing will feel familiar. Because in a world of infinite use, this might be the only timeline where we met. See you in the next one, or the last.